Hey everyone, I hope you can hear me all right. Welcome to our webinar on Seeing is Believing. This is about prototyping with Microsoft Visio. Not to get away too much at the start, this is a technique that worked quite well for us here at Sheffield Hallam, and we wanted to tell people about it to see if it could help anyone else. Without further ado, introduce ourselves. So my name is Catherine Roughton. I'm a senior business analyst at Sheffield Hallam. I've worked as a BA for Sheffield Council. I've had similar roles at Capita and Aon. So I've done a similar job for about 13 years. I've been here at Hallam for the last 3.5. And this is Clinton.
Hi, I'm Clinton. I've been at a BA at Sheffield Hallam for just sort of 5 years now. Previously working as an MI and reporting analyst at Aviva UK.
Brilliant. So, a little bit about Sheffield Hallam. So I'm not sure if anybody knows much about Sheffield Hallam, but we're quite a large university. We're the 7th largest in the UK. We've got some of our key facts and figures on the screen. Now, as you can probably see from some of these, we're quite a complex and big organisation. We've got a lot of systems and an awful lot of processes, probably a bit many, but this means we have a lot of change as well. So that's where our team comes in. And yeah, I'll just screen up for a couple of seconds so you can see the there's an extent of our university. We've got a couple of different campuses, lots of different buildings, and all our students. So it can get quite complicated. So a little bit about our university, and then we wanted to tell you a little bit about our team as well and how we work. So there's been a BA team at Hallam for, I think, probably just over 10 years, and it's still evolving. It used to be within the IT department, and then it moved out into a central area. Now it sits within planning. So we'd like to use agile technique for most of our projects, but because a lot of them are developed internally, it ends up being more of a waterfall or maybe a wagile kind of hybrid, because the situations we don't sit next to IT, so it's really difficult to do those kind of iterative projects. And also the way our IT department is set up is that people have to something full-time, like maintenance of the system, and they fit in projects around that. Projects aren't prioritised, and generally the IT guys need to know all of the information up front, so we tend to do more of a waterfall technique. So that will be relevant when we're telling you a little bit later about how we've approached our requirements gathering and so on. The scale of screen that we've got up, I'm not quite sure exactly where we are. It's probably somewhere in the middle. I don't think we're fully involved yet, but we're trying our hardest. So that's a bit about where we work, and we're just to tell you about what we're going to cover today. So what we'd like essentially is to tell you a little bit about a technique that we've discovered by using Visio. It's sort of a really cheap way of doing a visual for requirements that really helped us, and we just wanted to share it with people really. So what for our content is we'll tell you a little bit about some of the obstacles we face with requirements. I think a lot of these probably will be common to other people as well. And then we have an audience participation. We've done this presentation in front of people, but we've got a bit of a different exercise that we'd like you to do if we're sat at your desks, if that's all right, if you'd like to join in. And we'll tell you a little bit about why Visio and how prototyping's helped us. Clinton will show you through his real-life example, and then we will do a bit of a wrap-up. So I hope that sounds okay for everyone. So to get started, some of the things that we faced with requirements, I think probably some of these might be familiar to you guys too. I think they're quite common issues. But some of the issues we've had are that you have stakeholders. The first issue is you have stakeholders that picture different things. So one person will have one idea in their head, one picture of how something will look and feel, and somebody else will have a completely different view on it. And it's really difficult to try and balance that and also get a compromise between them. So that's that's one kind of massive issue that seems to crop up quite often. The other thing, sometimes you might get one person with a really strong idea, and they might be quite forceful about what they want, but they might necessarily be the best option. There might be somebody with a better, stronger, idea that's a bit more practical, but they don't get their views across. So that's a bit difficult to try and represent that when you're capturing requirements and putting together work for a new system. Also, so what I've had quite a lot is people don't really know what they want, or they've got a few ideas, but it's not a complete picture. It's quite difficult for people to visualise something when they haven't got anything to start with, particularly. So you don't have a system at the moment and you're trying to build something. We found it really hard to try and get information out of people, so they'll just say something like, I just want it to work the spreadsheet, I just need that information in there, or they'll say something like, I don't know, make it user-friendly, but then you don't really know what that means. You have to try and interrogate them to get the detail what they mean by user-friendly. So does it mean a button here? Does it mean you have to click through to the next screen? It could be all sorts of things, but it's difficult to picture. And the final problem that we quite a lot is that people just aren't interested or not engaged. They're like, I don't know why we need to do this. Can't you just make this system? I haven't got time to be involved. So this is some of the things that we come up with quite often. Our requirements. So later on, we'll talk through how we've overcome some of those, which will hopefully be helpful. This is our audience participation section. When we've done this interview in front of a group of people, we've had that have come up and stood at the front, and they've drawn a picture for us. But as this is a virtual presentation, if you like to participate, if you've got pen and paper, that's all you need, and it'd be really nice if you wanted to have a go, just to get a bit of involvement. That's okay. So the reason why we did this participation is we'd like to demonstrate how people can get completely different pictures from the same written requirements. So what we'll do is we'll read out 7 requirements for a house, and we'll ask you to draw a picture of the house as we describe it. And you can imagination, be as creative as you like, but stick to the 7 requirements as we read them. And the reason we do this is because when you have written requirements on their own, they can be open to interpretation, and one person can picture something completely different. So we put this picture on the slide, and we quite did it because we thought one person's puff daddy is another person's smoke father. It's a bit of a silly thing, but it's quite you can see how you can get something quite different from the same stuff. So with further ado, we're going to move on to the exercise. So if you want to participate, just grab a pen and paper and draw a house as we talk through the requirements. So we want you to be our developer and build a house by drawing a picture. So if you draw a picture of a house, the first requirement is we'd like the house to have a working chimney. So if you're participating, I'll just give you a few seconds to that.
The next moment, the user wants the house to have a garden with trees.
Okay, so I think I've just given you a few seconds. The third requirement is we would like to have a garage.
Next is the user would like the house to have a door.
Requirement is the user would like to have 3 windows on the front of the house.
The user would like a fence.
Sorry, the user would also like a front lawn. In our presentations, when we've done this in front of people, at this point turned around their pictures and compared them to see how alike or different they are. But because this is virtual, we've mocked up some mock-ups in Visio to show the different ways that these same requirements can look for a house. And so Clinton's just going to talk you through those.
You can see from the pictures, all four of those actually meet the requirements as they were specified before. And as you can see, there's differences between all of them. Catherine mentioned earlier, written requirements are very much open to interpretation. I've always found it more useful to instead take a picture and go and talk to your stakeholders, make alterations as you go. This helps create a shared view and their own kind of ownership of the development, and working towards a common vision. I'm sure you're all able to see your pictures and compare them to the others. There'd be a few glaringly obvious things missing from the requirements, which would make sense. I'm sure you would have drawn a roof, but that wasn't actually specified, even though we all know it's needed. Now that the roof is mentioned, the user would like, what type of roof would they like? Would they like slate, tiled, or corrugated? If you put, what type of trees you put, the user could be a bit more specific in saying they wanted trees, for instance. Nothing was stipulated about the garage. Was it a double garage? Was it a single garage? The driveway leading up to the garage. Obviously, this, mentioned could potentially not have been developed. But, in terms of windows, what kind of windows would you want? Leaded or sash? And the user want the fence to go around the entire property, just around the front of the house. This becomes more apparent. All these things become much more apparent when you actually got a physical picture in front of you for people to go through. All these in Visio, creating little custom stencils, a lot of things you can find on the web, or creating shapes as and when you need.
Okay.
I hope it's something a bit different in these and realize that I think visual helps a lot more.
So I'm not sure how many of you participated in that exercise, but hopefully you can see from the same written requirements you can get something very different. And having a picture there already can really help. Earlier I mentioned some of the key problems that happen when gathering requirements. If you remember, these were things like conflicting ideas, one strong idea that's not necessarily the best, a complete lack of idea or not wanting to engage. So these are some of the sort of key problems we face. So if you can see if you have a picture to start with, like the picture of our houses, if we have the same written requirements, we could ask the user or ask the users in a group what they thought was best. So if we've got stuff mocked up already, we could say to somebody, how does that roof look to you? Or how do you want to get to the front door over the lawn? Are you going to need a path with that? They might not have realised they needed a path at all. So those kind of things can become completely, obvious once you've got a mock-up in front of you. Particularly when we're looking at systems, it can really help to have something to start with. If you're starting from scratch, we found, and you don't have anything at all, it's a brand new system or it's a new way of recording something, we think it's good to have as a doorman, so that's why we've got our guy on there. And then really help. If you present someone with a blank piece of paper when you're gathering requirements. Sometimes they can completely draw a blank, and they're like, oh, I have no idea, I don't know, just give me a system that works. But if you've got something there already, it's quite clear for people, and they can say, oh, that's not going to work, and the requirements will soon start falling out. So even if it's not something that they would have wanted, it gets that detail out, so you can sort of iteratively build it, a mock-up based on what people want. Also, what you could do is what we do quite a lot of here, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, is we make enhancements of existing systems or change functionality in the existing systems. So if you're doing a mock-up, you can quite easily do the look and feel of something that exists, so people will know what to expect and what can happen, what it will look like, and they can think around that a bit better. Now, this will help a little bit with some of the problems that we mentioned before. Because if you've got people in a group and they've got a common picture that they're working to, you can get consensus a bit more easily. Yeah, fair enough, there still might be disagreement. It might be easier to demonstrate for one person to say, oh no, this won't work because we need a search button here and we need to draw this data forward. And you can sort of describe it a little bit better and probably get people on board if you've got a good idea for something. The main thing for us, though, is that you get so much more detail. If you've got something there already to start with, you can get that absolute next level of detail. So people wouldn't even think of what data they need to read, what data they need to write. They won't be thinking about that kind of thing when asking for system requirements. They'll be thinking about, does it look pretty? What colour is the screen? How do I get from one place to the other? So they won't necessarily think, okay, right, I need to view this to be able to fill in this bit of data which needs to write back. And it can help loads. So when we're talking about more detail, that for pictures, it's things like, oh yeah, we didn't realise we needed a path, but now we look at it, yeah, we definitely need a path there. Or next level of detail for the slate roof, for example. Also, just how it works well for us is when pictures can accompany requirements. So you've got the written requirements down there with your basics, and then you've got the picture to help along. So that's how we've used it. I think if we were able to do Agile, I think they might be able to replace actual requirements if we have a talk through and for the developer whilst they were doing it. But for us, they definitely work better as an extra to go along with requirements. So Clinton's going to talk you through some of the different things that we've done in a minute. Thanks.
To just put in a brief of the difference between wireframes and prototypes, because it's something we've definitely found gets used interchangeably quite a lot. Sticking with the analogy with the houses, wireframe is essentially the skeleton or blueprint of what you want to build, the building blocks, if you will, for detailing what you want to see on screen. But it is very much a static view, whereas your wireframe is your blueprint. Your prototype is going to be your show house. It's show you how the user is going to or potentially will interact with the system. Much more dynamic because it flows through. Essentially, your prototype is linking wireframes together, a load of wireframes together. At Sheffield, we've used prototyping quite a lot to help gather requirements and to also help communicate and test system development before it's actually built. It's beneficial because it can give us long run and also money because you're not actually physically building anything until everyone's happy with what they're going to see. It's also called this because in C things that they do or don't want, very much a fail fast kind of mentality. And we also use it to help further refine detailed requirements. For example, depending on what you're looking at on screen, users can easily more see where they need certain buttons or certain fields to display on screen, what kind of fields they're going to need, difference of the data they're going to be required. We've used Visio for prototyping to make really quick mock-ups based on a scrap of paper you've found that someone just mocked something up quickly on a scrap of paper, just drawn it up in Visio, going the full kind of development route where you are physically replicating all the movement between screens. In Visio, the use of hyperlinks, and you can hyperlink to certain Visio or specific bits and pages. With tools out there, for instance, Keynote is a good one, and Balsamic. Often a free trial version that runs out, and you eventually going to have to stump up some money to pay for it. To give you an easier tool to achieve what you could do in Visio. Prototyping with Visio has helped to get people to think in a different way. It's been really useful to define what people consider to be user-friendly. Essentially, the job of a business analyst is to communicate. We found that Visio a visual tool. A lot with this, without a traditional prototype, we use Visio to stimulate the interaction of the system, how to behave without actually doing any coding. A good point for using Visio is reuse. Buying up your own custom templates or setting a lot of the stencils you've created previously. When it comes to prototyping, again, in a similar fashion, at least you've got a basis to work from, which cuts down some of your requirements gathering time. Hallam, a main drawing point for using Microsoft Visio is the fact that it's on every single PC in the university. Easy to adapt, and we did in with a lot of our training courses that we offer. Also, the creative and analytical part of your brain, working with the visual, seeing something on a page is a lot easier than talking through it or just reading words about it. And not plug Microsoft in any way, but seeing as Visio is a Microsoft product, it's also really easy to integrate it with things such as Word and PowerPoint.
So we're just going to talk you through a couple of examples that we've used ourselves now. I first started to have a go at doing a mock-up in Visio. Some of the project managers that I was working with on the project that I was doing thought it wouldn't be possible because we didn't have fancy software for creating wireframes and so on, and weren't sure if it was going to work or not. But as Clinton said, we kind of use the tools that are available to us, and we don't know if it's the same for you guys as well, but we've got Visio here on our computer, so we thought we might as well use it the best we can. Just to talk you through this, don't worry if you can't see the detail too much, just to give you a bit of an indication of how we use it differently. So the project I was working on at the time where I used this mock-up was a project to try and get assessment data into a student record system. We had a separate standalone system that was built here at the university. It was quite costly and a bit messy, and that was used for managing a lot of assessment data. And most of the assessment data was held in spreadsheets. So we wanted to get all of the information into our student record system. Now, the assessment data we're talking about is a due date, assessment type, where it needs to be handed in, or whether it's online or not, and just the title of the essay or assignment, that kind of thing. So our student record system is SITS, so we decided to do a mock-up to see how we could get the information into SITS in some kind of way. So the picture behind is my mock-up, and the one in front is the system we used to get it into our student record system. Now, how this worked for me was it's not the most beautiful mock-up in the whole world, but it did the job. It was very quick to do, and I used it essentially to get to have a look at what data they needed to look at. It was just to get a picture of what data they needed to call up to read. So they'd need to know things like what the module was, who the module leader was, what the weighting was, that kind of stuff. So they needed to be the data that they could view, and then the data they needed to write back into the system was things like the due date, the task name, that kind of stuff. Without the mock-up, it was really difficult to try and get that information out of people, and without sort of having that interaction with the actual visual, people weren't really sure about how they wanted to view it. Now, my mock-up's very, very quick one, and it's a little messy, but it got people to the level of knowing what data they needed to look at and how they needed to navigate from one screen to the next. Because, of course, quite a lot of assessment data, and it was never all going to be on screen. Things like people had not thought about, going to the next button and searching for information, pulling up reports, and so on. So that helped a lot. As you can see on, well, you probably can't see, it's quite small in my mock-up, but there's a call-out boxes where I've just described functionality behind it, and I've just talked to the developer about this once I've been going through the requirements. And this one is the actual system that's used to get assessment data in. Obviously, it's a lot prettier than mine because it's still a system, but it's got the same data there. It's brought forward, all of the information about the course and module, and then people are able to write back the assessment details and navigate from screen to screen. So my version is not very fancy, but it was very quick, and it got me to the point where I wanted to. It got the information from the users, and it got the information to the person who was doing the joint. So that was pretty good. Considering I started off when I was talking to users, and they just wanted to keep the information I got in a spreadsheet. So it was a vast improvement from there on, and I think it really helped to get them in the right kind of frame of mind when they're talking about getting some of the data in the system even. Yeah, so that's my mock-up that I use. So Clinton's just going to show you something at the other end of the scale now.
A bit of fun behind the one I'm going to show you in a minute. If I can get the screen up. Yeah. This was for a project called Student View. Essentially, it was bringing together all the student and curriculum data to one easily accessible place. Using this online, similar to something we had developed previously called Curriculum View, which was bringing all the curriculum data within the entire university into an online space, all hopefully on everything that was held within the student record management system. First stuff I'm going to show you was initially started in group workshops and then refined in one-to-one sessions. It took roughly 5 months at an average of about 20 hours per week to pull it all together. When mock-ups were actually signed off by business, it took about a week to write the complete list of requirements and then get this sent off to the developers. And this was the final version of the mock-up. I've converted to PDF just to make it easier for the click-throughs. It has all been done, and all the hyperlink clicks all work through. So since you've got your basic search screen, criteria that people wanted, click on this, how the system would break down based on your search results. You'd find the person you want, so we'll go to Clark Kent, and you bring up their information. I know it looks quite small on the screen. As Catherine earlier, you've got call-outs for additional information that you would require in these. Users said they wanted tabs across the top to view all the various different information. They wanted, because if I show all this expanded, then it's quite busy. If you only wanted to see certain bits, all you'd have to click on the sections you needed. All this data, so people don't have to worry too much about DPA side of things. When you kill a bit, you show the expanding things, showing previous year students. viewing details of this course, then this is an actual screenshot from the curriculum view system I mentioned that was created. You click that into Visio as well. But all I'm showing now all Visio tools and created ourselves based on shapes that people said they liked and wanted. For instance, these red buttons were based the theme to the curriculum view that was created. People wanted a similar look and feel. You can look like things collapsible, things will expand, use your close buttons. 7 weeks of going through all of this with the users to find these requirements. Once that got signed off, I think the requirements document was about 87 pages worth of requirements. Not ideal sending a massive chunk of things like that to the developer and then for feedback to come back from that. It is actually now built. I could enter, but I can't actually search for any students because I don't have any dummy student numbers, so I wouldn't be allowed to show anything anyway. But what I can do. I can show you the search screen.
It's I think the system is for staff to view.
Yeah. So this one in view that I mentioned, a similar search, a similar looking for the student view, and this went live, I believe, if memory serves correctly, about a month ago. And there we go. So obviously the version is a lot prettier. Initially mocked up. But it would be really useful to pull everything together. In the process of doing mock-ups, we have created a stencil. It's based on stuff that is actually found within Microsoft Visio. We created a few additional ones, just your generic things. It's also really easy if you do find something you like to cut, create into a picture, and then you can add that block or the thing you found that you want to use, if you want to use something similar, into your stencils and save them to use across Visio. Benefits of, and based on our experience, we use prototyping and these mock-ups at project initiation and investigation phases is sort of a proof of concept. In initial discussions with stakeholders to do the mock-ups and start, getting your high-level requirements out. We've also used it throughout the requirements gathering process, both for whole system development and as part system development, if you're making adjustments to existing systems. And we've also been doing it at the build stage to help further refine or clarify anything when you're getting feedback from the developers, or you need to just do some toing and froing between stakeholders and developers. We're doing agile. Good, and certain projects will do little bits and pieces of it. This is to do the prototype at discovery phase, get your high-level requirements, and then send those off to the developer. And then as you go along and refine things, you can update your central repository of wireframes, and it makes it easier for everyone to just follow what's, the process of the development. benefits we found is a faster turnaround between stakeholder sessions and developers to produce an actual system. In that example I used, I said about 5 months, but probably would have been longer if we've been getting those requirements without actually having anything visual and just sitting and talking to people and, you know, to reuse it saves a lot of time. It definitely helps to build a common understanding between stakeholders because they're all looking at the same thing. Everyone has a shared view, and it helps the discussion when people aren't agreeing on things, because it can make the changes in front of each other and everyone can agree whether something is going to work or not. Definitely use the ambiguity involved, seeing as people can physically see it. We found that it's also led to more detailed or more refined or practical requirements. For instance, people don't always consider flows between the screens, or how data is going to be displayed on the screen, or groupings of certain data items together, what's going to make things even beneficial for people to understand. Change is also very easy to implement before a build. Everything Visio, literally paste or highlight, delete, to get rid of things people don't want, add new things. Give people a better idea of a working system, and also can help for developers to tell you sooner if it's going to work or not, or what's possible in the actual development.
So Clinton's mentioned the things that we think are benefits from using mock-ups and prototypes with Visio. There are some pitfalls, as with anything, so we're just going to mention a few things to watch out for. Well, I suppose the main thing is you need to balance how long you spend making your prototype with the expense of making the system. Obviously, as Clinton mentioned, it's very much preferable to sell fast. So if it's much cheaper to do a mock-up and find out that somebody doesn't want something working in that way before you build the system. But you just need to balance how fancy your prototype is compared to the system. You don't want to spend longer on making the prototype than it would to actually make the system. So I suppose the main thing. And then I suppose the other thing that came up quite a lot is managing expectations of stakeholders. They often expect systems to look exactly like or function exactly like your prototype or mock-up, and it's not going to do that. Even if you sort of work very closely with the current system look and feel, it's never going to look exactly the same or function exactly. So you just need to let them know what they're looking at is just a mock-up. So as Clinton was going through his PDF version of Visio as he went through, it's hyperlinks that are causing it to jump from screen to the other, and people often don't. It sounds quite bad. They don't understand that that's not the actual system doing that, and it won't actually work exactly the same. So it's just to caveat everything that you do with the prototype or mock-up. Something that we both fell foul of with our prototypes and mock-ups was to ensure that the developers read the information that went alongside it, because if you work like we do, where you don't get to sit next to the developer and you can't talk to them about each step that you're doing, we still need to provide requirements documentation, because there were things that we couldn't articulate in a picture, like data tables, permissions, user access, that kind of stuff. So we did do requirements that went alongside the pictures or prototypes. But what happened to both of us is that a bit of the system was built, and we said, "Oh, what about such and such?" And the developers said, "Oh, it wasn't in the mock-up, but it was in the requirements," because we can't articulate that in the mock-up. So it was quite. We had a bit of a sticky situation, both of us, on completely separate occasions. So I think if we were to go back and do both of our projects again, I think we'll be very, very clear to the developer that there are. I mean, obviously, requirements shared with them, but I think we'd probably be very clear that there's some extra stuff in the requirements that they really need to read also. So that, I suppose, is our biggest lesson learned from our experience with this. But overall, just to sum up, we think it's a bit of a balancing act. Now, Visio for us is free. is an expensive modelling tool. You do it quite quickly. So Clinton showed the template. We can share it if anybody wants after.
That answers one of the questions.
The template is very quick to do once you've got it set up. So we just compiled a few bits between us when we were doing our different projects. Once you can reuse the icons, very quick just to drag stuff on the screen. So it's cheap and quick, and it's a bit of a balancing act with the time that it needs to take to create it and the benefit of for users getting the requirements and for the developer to make the system. So we think it's valuable overall, but you just need to be careful and not fall into some of the traps that we've had for hours. That is such the end of our presentation, but we did want to say we hope there's some stuff for people to take away. So what we did provide before and what we can provide now is if you were to drop an email, I'll put our email addresses up in a minute. We can send you a copy of the presentation, the prototyping example that Clinton went through, and also the Visio Stencil, which you can feel free to use if it's valuable to you. In addition to that, we hope that our input of some approaches, the pros and cons of using Visio for prototyping, we hope that's something that you might be able to take away. With it, prototyping is not a new thing for business analysts, but we think that we do something quite in a smart way because it's free and easy to do. Hopefully that's a bit helpful. So I'm just going to put on our email addresses if you want to jot them down. If you'd like a copy of the Visio Stencil or anything else, feel free.
Yeah, because we had a question, would you be able to share the templates? And yes, we would. Which is the best route? If we send it to you guys to then distribute, or if it's easier for you guys to just email us, then we can send it off to you. For those asking, the version we're currently using at Sheffield Hallam is Visio 2010.
It's not date, but it is compatible with. I think our template is compatible with 2013 because I shared it with some consultants that are working with us with a different version of Visio. So that's it from us. I'm not sure if there were any questions or not, so I'm just going to unshare the screen if that's okay, so I can see. Let's see if anyone's got any questions for us. So when using, how do I get that question?
On the Q&A.
Okay. So I think that might be one for Clinton. So if requirements took 5 months, how long did the development take?
The type took about 5 months, requirements about a week to write, got sent off to the developers, and then our IT department went through a restructure. So it sat with them for 12 months before we actually got resource to do it. When we did get resource, that became available in July, and it went fully live beginning. So July, September. So call it 4 months. How long did it take to manage expectations of the user? How did you manage to expectations of the user? With them, I get really excited when you do some pretty pictures, but I think for us at the university is a lot of the things are very similar to each other. So you can start showing people a similar look and feel.
Say for me to manage the expectations of the user was quite easy because mine wasn't as fancy as Clinton's prototype. I didn't do the hyperlinks so you click through to the screen. Essentially what I did when I spoke to users about it was I printed it off and was scribbled on it, and we just as we went through, we just drew on bits of paper. So that they weren't expecting, because I'd only shown them a bit of paper really, with just to get the requirements out to draw on. So it wasn't as fancy as I say, but so it was easy just to say, yeah, the system's going to look nicer than this. But it didn't. It wasn't as spruced up. It was quite a quick mock-up for me. The question.
How do we link the PDF to each navigation step? When creating it in Visio itself, buttons to go to wherever you need them to go, so other pages, other fields in a page. When you convert your Visio drawing in PDF, it pulls across those links for you, and then it literally just is a click on to move, and it copies everything across for you.
There was a question, how do you use the straw man? I think it's really useful for when people have no idea what they were going to want them. So you just, if you've got an existing system, you can replicate some of the look and feel, and then just make something quite basic based upon that. If it's a new system, what we could do is just try and think about, it's a bit of a guess about what kind of data, what kind of information people might want, but as soon as it's mocked up and put in front of people, they tell you that that's not what they want. So you end up getting the requirements by default by telling people saying, oh God, this is terrible, and they say what they don't want rather than what they do, and you can get some really good information that way. When we say straw man, we're just like putting something up to be knocked down by somebody else, but it's a good start sometimes, especially when people have no idea about where they'd start, and if you gave them a blank bit of paper, they'd just shrug and say, I'm not really sure, I don't really know. So hopefully that question.
Did the IT department buy into and engage with the prototypes, or did they want to have autonomy on the design? A bit of both. A lot of the developers have actually been quite happy to have a visual. What they have found is they will build based on the visual, ignoring the finer detail in the requirements. So sometimes it's a bit of going and throwing. Some try and stick as closely as possible to your prototype. Others go off script and actually create something that looks far better and a lot nicer than I could ever do in Visio. So I think it's just keeping that door open and making sure we're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's pretty similar for mine as well. I did version with users, and then I went back to the developer and just said, technically, how would this work? Because some things that they wanted weren't technically possible. Better to, send emails from the screen and so on, and I don't think that was possible in the time we had to do. So I just went back and forth, the same as Clinton really, and just checked in with Ian, who was doing development for my project. Do you have a question?
No, that's it.
Fab. I just want to see if any more questions pop up. Yeah.
You're saying that's all the questions.
Oh, but okay. Thank you ever so much. It was our first webinar. It's quite strange not talking to people face to face, so I hope we did an okay job for you. And thank you very much for listening. I hope it's useful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.